Welcome to another Motortown video. Today I'm here to show you guys an updated explanation on the industry supply chains in this game. There's a lot going on, it's a lot more complex than what we had over a year ago when I made my first video on the topic. So that one is heavily outdated, and with how much stuff we have going on right now, it also wouldn't be a good idea to try and explain it while in game anymore. So we'll be looking at a flowchart today, and that's the only thing you'll be seeing for the entirety of this video. Otherwise, it would just not really make much sense, I don't think. I'll also try and upload the flowchart to some social media page or something just to give you guys a download link in the description. Should just be a simple JPEG, no executable or anything like that. Always be careful out there. And that means that you could just look at the stuff yourself and don't need to come back to this video just to uh, get some update on one particular piece of information. Speaking of updates, this flowchart has been made as part of the 0.7.14 public test. At this point, it seems like there won't be any more supply chains as part of that update, so I hope this information will be up to date for at least a while. But future editions are most certainly to come, so this will need another update at some point. So before we get into the actual supply chains, let's quickly talk about the symbols that I use in this flowchart, because otherwise the whole thing isn't going to make much sense to you guys. In principle, there are two different groups of shapes. We have the ones with corners and edges, so the diamond shape up here and the rectangle over here, and the ellipses. Ellipses are cargoes, while the other two are places to visit. So actual production sites in-game where you can collect and bring cargo to. There's also a difference between a fully filled out shape and a hollow one. Hollow ones means that you won't be getting anything else for a supply chain from there. It's basically just to deliver some cargo there, get the money, and that's about it. Filled in means that there is a bit more going on. And yeah, for the difference between the diamond shape and the rectangle, the diamond ones are the start of production chains. These are places that give you guys stuff without requiring an input. In a lot of cases, you can boost production rate by giving the place another additional input item, but usually that's not required to get started. So these are the beginnings of supply chains, and everything else is more in the middle or towards the end, and anything hollow means that you won't get any other benefit apart from the money. I also took a bit of editorial freedom by making the construction sites diamond shapes with the hollow theme going on. So that means that while theoretically you get a bit of additional production boost from delivering beams, planks, pipes, that kind of thing, it's only for sand. And sand is available in abundance, so I put that there to clarify that effectively, usually you will only get the money for the transportation that you did, and that's about it. Let's zoom out now to shock everybody, and then let's get into the actual explanation of everything that is going on here. Yes, there are a lot of different supply chains that I tried to separate out by giving them different colors. In a lot of ways, I also simplified things and tried to keep them somewhat separate, sometimes keep things connected when they are, and are basically going between different supply chains, like fuel being used in a lot of other places. But yeah, when it boils down to it, if you really look at everything in detail, the game has two supply chains that are completely separate from each other. And every cargo, every place in the game is connected to either one of those two. One of them is up at the top left here, the fish supply. You bring fish in your live fish truck from the Harlem Fish Market to any of the sashimi places, you get a bit of money from it, and that's it. This is one supply chain in the game. Everything else is connected to the other one. So yeah, this turned into quite the errand trying to figure out everything. But yeah, we are going to keep things small, look at the different things in terms of their colors, because those are the ones that are really well connected to each other. And everything else is a bit, it is technically connected via warehouses, containers, pallets, and that kind of thing, but they also stand on their own. So one of the key parts of this supply chain is the supermarkets. In order to supply supermarkets, there are two different ways. The simple one is through the farms. You have cabbage farms, beans farms, corn, rice, pumpkins, oranges, that kind of deal. All of those give you pallets of the specific produce, and you can bring that over to the supermarkets for a town bonus. You can check the percentage each different type of good will give you in the supermarket's menu, and note that potatoes are currently not a thing in the game. They exist in the supermarket list for some reason, but there are no potato farms and no actual potato pellets in the game that you can collect and bring somewhere else. The more complicated way to deliver to supermarkets, which will also give you an additional bonus that is higher than the simple produce pellets, is through stuff that's getting produced in different factories. Most of these, apart from the water factory, is available in Gujwa in the northeast area of Jeju Island. So the cheese, meat, bread, and food factory are all next door neighbors pretty much. Although food factory is its own thing. For most of these, you just need to grab containers from the harbors or the overseas import company and bring that to the place, and that will give you some production. Some of them can also take pallets in addition to that, or as an alternative. And you can get those from any of the warehouses around the map. Some pallets are also being produced by factories, and they can also go into the same place, so that's another thing that works. But yeah, meat boxes, bread pallets, and water pallets are what you can get from that process, and they can all go into supermarkets. You can also supply the cheese factory, but it doesn't need containers, it actually needs milk. There are two ranches where you can get milk. One of them is at the dirt oval in the center of Jeju Island. Often overlooked, but it actually has a much higher production capacity, so that can actually fill up a full-size tanker trailer quite easily. And the cheese factory, besides giving you cheese pellets for the supermarkets and maybe also for the food factory, it will also give you cheese boxes. Cheese and meat boxes can be used to deliver to the pizza or burger places around Jeju Island, and they will give you premium deliveries. If you don't deliver to them, I mean, they are marked as diamond shapes, so they will still give you some stuff. But the regular deliveries that you get without those supplies aren't worth all that much. And you really want the premium deliveries in order to get the most out of the time that you spend delivering pizzas. So now let's go on to this part up here. This is very important because this is something that's going to be usable for other industries as well. As I said already, the harbors and the overseas import company can produce containers, or they import containers, whatever. Those containers can go to different warehouses. While warehouses already give you a bit of a stock by default, you can also use these to boost up the production of ABC pellets, and those pellets can go to a lot of different places. Sometimes they are required, sometimes they are optional, and basically when any place in this game asks for pellets and doesn't specify what type, it just means that they are some type of cargo pellets, and anything that's available at other places that goes to that location is eligible as part of the production chain there. So if my cheese factory spits out some pellets that go to the food factory, that means that the food factory will use those to give you guys more food pellets. The food pellets, by the way, are timed item and they go only to the airport right now. But yeah, I think that's everything regarding this part. So let that sink in for a moment and then let's go over to the next one. Looking still at the top here, we can also take pallets from the warehouses and use them to resupply our depots. So that's an option once the depot goes below 50%, and one single pallet will actually fill it up by 50% again. So this is how you can resupply depots when on a server, and if it's not your own depot, you cannot just purchase a resupply for it. Another quick thing to talk about is military crates. These things can be found hidden around the military base. There are 10 pickup spots somewhere around the place, not marked on the map. You have to go around and look for an empty blue box. It's a similar color to this entire thing right here. And yeah, you can find empty supply boxes where they have a randomly picked warehouse as destination. You can bring the stuff to that warehouse and wait around for a few seconds until the warehouse will return a fully loaded supply box. And you can drop that back off at the military base. That's the marked drop off at the base that you have there. And that's how you do that supply chain. It's a bit fringe, not many people know about it, or at least not everybody knows about it. And people are constantly looking at the drop off in order to get a supply box. But no, you need to find them around the base. They are physical objects just placed around there. I cannot stress that enough. Also, one thing that I almost forgot to mention, some of these places will give secondary factory or farm products, like pumpkin crates, for example, some of the cheese boxes, meat boxes, and I think also bread boxes, and maybe not water pellets, but just the water boxes or whatever. They can go to AliExpress and give you additional residential deliveries. AliExpress also spawns a lot of stuff by default, so it's a bit like a warehouse for smaller items, but hasn't been used all that much recently by a lot of people. Anyways, let's go over to the next supply chain, which is going to be wood and planks. We start over here on the left. At any of the logging places, we have medium oak logging, medium regular logging, and G-Juice Isengard logging. These two are basically the same, only in different locations. But note that the oak logging place is different because not only is it much harder to reach, you get a different type of log out of there. From the regular places you get 20-foot logs, from the other place you get 12-foot oak logs. The oak logs can only go into medium log warehouse and from there are redistributed into other places. The 20-foot logs can go to either the warehouse or different lumber mills directly or just to the harbors for export. And you can also export the 12-foot oak logs from the warehouse to the harbors, so that's another option. The main thing here, though, is that you can also transport either type of log to the lumber mill, and that will give you the 5-ton, 14-foot wood plank. I still don't fully understand the technology behind getting 14-foot planks out of 12-foot logs, but let's not question it. The important part here is that it doesn't matter which type of log you transport, in the end you are always going to get the same type of plank out of it. And you can do a lot of different things with it. First up, you can bring the wood plank to Guangjin storage. That can basically return more wood planks going into different locations in Guangjin. Wood planes can be used at construction site as a delivery ware. Theoretically, once again, boosting the output a little bit, but it's not that useful, and therefore we have constructions as a hollow shape. You can also boost production rate across different industries, like if you're doing if you're going on a server with a heavy focus on coal mining, for example, that's one that's used quite often, or maybe the oil drilling place, that kind of thing. It can also go to the furniture factory. It will need plastic pellets as well in order to get furniture produced. That can go to either the Gangyang or AWOL furniture store, and both of them have residential deliveries available where you can make a bit more money. The last use for wood planes right now is player-owned construction sites. We'll talk more about that later because, as you can see, there are a lot of different types of goods in addition to wood that needs to be added here, but that's for a later part of the video. So on its own, this is a rather simple supply chain, but it also has some stuff coming in from other places. It also goes to a lot of other places, especially when it comes to boosting production rates. And you can also boost production rates of logging places with fuel, for example. But I didn't want to add that in because that would just make the entire thing way too overloaded. So let's now talk about the fuel and oil supply chain, marked by this, what is it, blue or purple to orange color here. So this is all that has to do with that. We start at OG Drilling. OG Drilling produces crude oil that can either go to Jeju Harbor, which is also a place where you can get fuel directly, or you bring the crude oil to the refinery. Refinery, once again, will also produce fuel, but it can also produce oil. Fuel is used in a lot of places. You can bring it to different fuel storages for later. You can bring it to different production sites to boost the production rate. You can bring it to gas stations, which will give people cheaper fuel for a while. You can completely waste it at construction sites, or you can bring it over to the concrete factory, which from my understanding right now is one of the few ones where you actually need to bring the stuff to. Most places fuel is optional, but this one is one of the few where it actually is required. It's also going to be required at the Terra factory, but to keep things a bit easier to see, I decided to make this a separate blip. So some of the stuff will pop up multiple times here. It's unavoidable of how complex the stuff is. I couldn't, for example, make an arrow from the oil to over here without crossing through a lot of other things. It's just gonna be more and more of a mess if I keep all the connections up. Anyway, speaking of oil, oil goes into the plastic factory and the Terra factory directly. And the plastic factory has two things that it can produce. It can produce plastic pellets, which are also used in the Terra factory, but can also go to the furniture factory for more furniture, and it can go into the toy factory as well. Toy pellets can either go to, the toy pellets being produced at the factory can either go to the supermarkets for really no additional benefit, or they can go into warehouses and then later go to Center's workshop or once again supermarkets. Basically warehouses, they do what you think they do. You bring the stuff over and when you get it back out again, they give you mostly the same order, so doesn't really change anything. It's just a stop in between. And in order to get anything produced at the toy factory, you will not only need plastic pellets, but also pellets from other factories or warehouses, or containers from the harbors or overseas import company. In addition to the already mentioned uses, there's also the Christmas event with Santa's workshop, So toy pallets need to be supplied, and then either pallets from the factories or warehouses or the containers to give you toys for residential deliveries. Again, with a time-limited Christmas event, highly profitable but not available all the time. So the next thing to talk about here are plastic pipes. Plastic pipes are the other good produced from the plastic factory. Mainly goes to construction sites, but more importantly, the ones owned by a player where you can actually construct something after a while if you bring all the required materials. So that's their primary use right now. And I think that's everything regarding these. So let's move on to a bit further to the right here with the concrete and cement supply chain. God. We start at the limestone quarry. The limestone quarry produces limestone rock that goes into the rock crusher at the bottom of the quarry, and that gives you processed limestone. That can either go to the steel mill where it's required for production or to the cement factory. The cement factory will either give you quicklime, which is a new good just introduced into the game, and that can boost production rate at the farms and plantation. Can be a good thing, but really circumstantial right now. The other thing that the cement factory, of course, produces is cement, which you can haul over to the concrete factory. The concrete factory is where actually construction sites are becoming useful because they produce sand. Sand or fine sand is required at the factory to produce concrete alongside fuel and cement. Basically, these two are interchangeable. You can fill whatever requirements you have with sand by either supplying the regular or the fine sand. In order to get fine sand, you will have to bring concrete over to construction sites, and that will give you the slightly heavier but also slightly more profitable fine sand instead of a regular one. And both concrete and fine sand can be supplied to player-owned construction sites for additional stuff to be built. And yeah, they will also need the H-beams, which is the last large supply chain here. So we're now getting into the mines, iron, steel, that kind of thing. Also the Terra factory. And we start at either the iron ore mine and the coal mine or Darsa Harbor. These places give you iron ore and coal, and they can go to either the steel mill or Gwanglan storage. If you get your stuff from Darsa Harbor, it does not go into the storage. It goes straight to the steel mill. But yeah, that's just how it goes. And you can also bring coal over to the harbors, either Jeju or Dasa. But yeah, the primary use for all of these things is to bring them to the steel mill and produce H-beams and steel coils. Steel coils can be brought over to the Anston race car factory alongside containers from harbors or the overseas import company, we remember, and pallets from factories or warehouses. There's still the option to use small packages instead of using steel coils, but those are hard to find and should be removed from the game sooner or later anyways. That's been the plan for a while. And the Anston Race Car Factory will of course produce the Formula SCM for purchase. There was the intent to add the option to deliver the Formula SCM to other places with this update. Didn't happen because of all the other stuff, but yeah, I got some space over here, and that's where the delivery would go into. Right now that's not a thing in game, so I decided to not add it to the map here. Actually, I had it in here, but since it doesn't seem to come with this update, I removed it again. Hope it will happen sooner or later. Anyways, another reason to use steel coils and H-beams right now, besides putting them into the harbors for export, is you can deliver them to the Terra factory. The Terra factory will of course also need plastic pellets from the plastics factory and fuel and oil from the nearby refinery in order to produce the Terra, which can either be purchased or delivered to the quarry. Either way, that's the end of the supply chain and completely removing the stuff from the world. So yeah, that's it overall. One small addition still, since we have a plantation, even though that's hardly even a supply chain at this point. We have a plantation which currently produces grain, or more specifically sunflower seeds, and that can go to Dessa Harbor or actually also Lijo Harbor. I should probably update this. This was done before the Lijo destination got added. So yeah, right now you can only export it. I expect this will be a more complex chain in the future. There are definitely steps to be added to make this a bit more complex and potentially get more stuff for the supermarkets. But yeah, that's the entirety of the current state of supply chains in the game. It's a lot. Also, this flowchart is a lot, and while I'm happy that I was able to visualize the different things at all, there's one major consideration with this thing, and it's always which things are better to actually draw a line from A to B in order to show that they are connected, and at which point should I just give up and use duplicates of the same type again, but without the proper context. I'm not entirely sure if I could ever make a fully connected version where every time I need containers, I go back to the same blip over here. Every time I need the same type of pellets, I go back to the same blip over here. I'm not sure if that's a possible thing, but I'm considering to maybe make another version of this for whenever I make another update video on this whole thing. And just cut it more into pieces so that we get rid of a lot of the interconnected parts and maybe put a bit more focus and emphasis on where certain items come from. Maybe using a bigger symbol for the wood planks, the fuel, the oil, that kind of thing, stuff that's present throughout multiple supply chains. Because with how the game is handling things right now, I think it's impossible to really show everything, especially once you get into the nitty-gritty of which industries can be boosted with fuel. Bringing the fuel over to this place, likely also the different farms, other industries, it can never be done, I don't think. There are so many things that would need to be the center of attention here in order for that to work out. And it's too complex. So let me know what you think, if I should make another version which is a bit more disconnected, like getting rid of stuff like this here and instead having another limestone blip over here, maybe in the color of the industry where it comes from, and making it a bit more modular. That might help. But yeah, I don't think getting a more connected version would actually be viable here. But yeah, anyways, let me know what you think about the whole thing. And as always, thanks for watching. I hope this was useful or entertaining. Until next time, have a good one and bye bye.